Our society is very transactional by nature. What I mean by that is most of us go through our daily lives with a very tit for tat mentality. I give you something, and in exchange, you give me something back in return. Case in point, if I decide I want a cup of coffee, I get in the car, I drive to my local coffee shop, I look and there's a menu, and on that menu, it's all the different types of coffee along with the price. I have a goal and I know exactly what I need to do to get what I want. I pay for my coffee, they give it to me, everyone's happy. And there's nothing wrong with this per se. However, it gives us some very unrealistic expectations about how life is supposed to work. Because everything is transactional in a coffee shop or a restaurant. We have a goal. I want a cup of coffee. We're told exactly what we need to do to get our coffee. We fulfill those requirements and we get our just reward. But things get very complicated when we deal with other people in daily life, especially when morality is concerned. Now, Buddhism, by its nature, is very focused on morality and virtue ethics. The Noble Eightfold Path, the Six Perfections, the Four Brahmaviharas are all there to teach us how to live a virtuous life. And understandably, we may have the thought that if we live this virtuous life, if we live in accordance with the Dharma, practicing right speech, right action, right livelihood, etc., then other people will respond in kind. Which is to say that if I am kind and loving in my speech to my neighbor, the transactional expectation is that they will be kind and loving back to me. If I am generous by allowing someone to cut in front of me in line at the grocery store, the expectation is that at the very least they'll say thank you. But we've all been in situations where we've said all the right things to a person and they've said all the wrong things to us. Or we've gone out of our way to help someone else and they've either brushed off our kindness or responded with anger for some reason. And in those moments, we can get very frustrated. Frustrated with the world, frustrated with the practice, and maybe even frustrated with ourselves because clearly we're not doing something right. We are paying the price to get the transaction we want, but we're not getting our cup of coffee in return. It's in these moments we must remember that life is not transactional. We don't always get what we want, much less what we deserve. It is completely possible to do all the right things and still have things not go our way. So if our motivation for doing the right thing is that we will get a reward, well, we're going to be setting ourselves up for failure and frustration. So what we do instead in Buddhism is we make the action itself, we make the virtue its own reward. In fact, in the Samdhi Nirmokana Sutra, the Buddha states that virtue is the root of pleasure. Now, it should be noted that when he says pleasure, he's not speaking about sensual pleasures. He's not talking about the short-term sensory input that we might receive from promiscuity or from drugs and alcohol. Those sensations are enjoyable, yes, but they're short-lived, and generally there are some negative consequences that happen as a result. No, the pleasure that the Buddha speaks of in the Samdhi Nirmokana Sutra is more akin to a long-term happiness, a sense of satisfaction and well-being. Virtue is the root of satisfaction and well-being. And we all know this in our daily lives. Very few people enjoy yard work, per se. It's not pleasurable to cut the grass and trim the hedges and work with the edge trimmer to get all the edges in the yard just right, to pull weeds in the flower bed. These aren't what I would call pleasurable things. However, there is a certain sense of satisfaction when we drive up to the house at the end of a long day and we have a well-manicured lawn. No one enjoys doing laundry. It's not pleasurable per se, but there is a sense of well-being that we experience when we open our dresser drawers or our closets and we see clothes that are clean and ironed and we can pick whatever we want to wear that day. We don't even have to give it the sniff test. When we practice virtue in Buddhism, we practice it with the understanding that we'll get that same sense of satisfaction that we get from doing yard work or from doing laundry. The other person has nothing to do with it. Yes, it is nice if someone says thank you if we let them cut in line. Yes, we would prefer if people say nice things to us, if we say nice things to them. But in the end, the virtuous act itself is our reward. That sense of satisfaction and well-being that we get from knowing that even if the world is a mess, even if everyone else is being a little bit of a jerk, we can take solace in the fact that we did the right thing. We were virtuous in our response. And in that virtue, we find our satisfaction, we find our sense of fulfillment, and we're able to continue in our virtuous actions regardless of the world does. And because of that, we continue on the path towards enlightenment, setting an example that others can follow. Amitabha.